accessed the podcast of OA. Located deep within Sector 14845 and powered by the Emerald Light of Will, the podcast of OA is your guide to the Green Lantern universe. Hosted by Lantern Myron Rumsey, the podcast of OA begins now.
Welcome, friends, to episode number 195 of the podcast of OA. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about this time around. We've got a conversation about Green Lantern issue number 3 and about Justice League Last Ride number 2. And I'm joined by my good friend Phil Bova. Phil, how you doing today?
Doing great. Looking forward to the 101 degree heat tomorrow.
We're a little late in recording this episode. Long story short, my employer requires that we burn up our vacation time. We can only roll over 15 days, and with the pandemic, not a lot of people took vacation. So I had a whole bunch of days I had to use up. So I took some time off, and my wife did, and I did a little bit of traveling. Actually got to go to a comic book convention, which was a lot of fun. So I took a little bit of time off, and so I haven't been able to record, and so here we are. And it's funny, I was just looking at this. We are recording on June 17th, which is the 10th anniversary of the release of the Green Lantern movie.
Yeah, I read that today on Twitter somewhere. Or maybe it was Reddit. I don't know which one it was, but whatever it was, the comments that followed weren't too kind. Probably Reddit.
No, and this is also, we are right on the verge. On the 20th will be the 10th anniversary of our first episode.
That's going to be awesome.
So we've got a milestone there as well. And we're also just about to hit episode number 200. So I was thinking about it, and maybe what we'll do is we'll celebrate the 10th anniversary and the 200th episode in the same episode, rather than try to fit something in on the actual anniversary, because this episode likely will not get published until June 20th. Anyway, so I'm thinking let's try to put together something special for episode number 200. And if you guys out there listening to the show have something you want to send us to air during an anniversary episode, please do. And later on, when we get to the listener feedback section, we'll have how you can contact the show and either leave a voicemail or send us a message of some sort. But we'd love to hear from you guys about what the show might mean for you and so on.
We could probably do it. We could probably do it like a whole the whole episode on just having listener feedback, and when they started listening to the show, why they started listening to the show to begin with, and we can just have a big old campfire.
Yeah, quite possibly. It depends on what kind of responses we get. I'm thinking about maybe asking Bill Giancoli to come on, and so it'd be the three of us, and listener feedback, and maybe do a Green Lantern the Motion Picture retro review.
Oh my gosh, that might be a little rough.
But we've got some Green Lantern news, not a whole lot. I don't know whether, Phil, if you saw it, but there was a season 2 trailer for Stargirl that had Jade in it.
Yeah, I saw it.
Yeah.
It's cool. I'm excited,
stuff.
Man.
Yeah, exciting stuff.
And it's a good place for her character to appear,
Yeah.
And it's representation. It's another strong female character. It'll be fun. And like I said, I like the JSA coming back into the fold. I think it's cool. I mean, the comic books, Alan Scott, it's going to be nice to see all these characters.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what happens. I'm optimistic about the future. Other news, our good friend Chad Bolkelman from the Lantern Cast shared on Twitter some information that was leaked out about, we've talked about the Funko Pops and how they're doing kind of some Green Lantern characters. So far they've done Black Hand, and we've been waiting to find out more what's coming. We know there's going to be a Jessica Cruz Funko Pop that's kind of slanted towards Deo de los Muertos, but there's also going to be an Atrocitus Funko Pop, which we think is going to be another Hot Topic exclusive. And supposedly at San Diego Comic-Con, there's going to be another version of Kyle Rayner. Now, they did a White Lantern version and a glow-in-the-dark White Lantern version a number of years ago, but it looks like they may be doing another one, if that rumor is true. But I appreciate Chad sharing that information with us. I have not done an article about it yet because I'm waiting for some official confirmation and maybe a picture or something to put it out there. But I think an Atrocitus Funko Pop, I think if it comes with a little deck star, that would be really, really awesome.
Well, and it's funny you mention that because I have 3 of them still on order that are waiting all to come, because they're all pre-orders, right?
Right.
So I got my Jessica Cruz is still on order. I got the Golden Age Superman, with the comic book image in the background.
Oh, yeah.
And then I got the Blackest Night Wonder Woman still waiting to come. And I think they come like September. One doesn't come till January of next year. That's the Superman one, I think. And then the September isn't one of them, and then I think November's, and I don't know. They're just all scattered. I'm never gonna get them.
Yeah, I think. When is the Wonder Woman one coming out? The White Lantern Wonder Woman. Gosh, or no, was it Black Lantern Wonder Woman? I can't even remember. It's been a while.
Yeah, I got it up right.
It was a glow in the dark Black Lantern Wonder Woman. It's an
yeah.
I got the Amazon exclusive one, and it comes out in July.
Yeah, July 2021. Right, the anniversary. Yeah, I think we got the same one.
Yep. I think I only ordered 2. I ordered that one, and then I'm a big Elvira fan, and they're coming out with a 40th anniversary of Elvira Funko Pop that I pre-ordered.
Yeah, I did the same thing with Macho Man Randy Savage.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I had to get that one, man. I was pretty stoked.
I dig it.
Funko Pops are awesome.
Yeah.
I don't know I wonder how many our fans collect them or whatever, but I got a nice little collection of them, and I love them. They're unique, and you always get happy when you find out they're making one of them out of somebody who's like, oh, I wouldn't have thought about that, but that's really cool,
I am dying to get my hands on a Stevie Ray Vaughan one, but they have not announced one yet. But I think what I like about it, I'm not a huge fan. I don't have a huge collection. I've got maybe 20 of them, but I like the fact that it's one product line where you can get things from all kinds of pop culture, and they figures all look okay together because they're of similar styling.
Yeah, I mean, and they really do. They could do a whole movie out of all the movies these characters are made out of.
Yeah, right.
I think my favorite one that I found at a collector's store, and it's the Wonder Twins. I love it.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, that's super, super cool. I'm looking for a Samurai Jack one, but man, that thing's pricey. I just don't know if I can afford it.
I missed out on the Sinestro one back when the movie came out, and I kicked myself for it because it's worth so much money now, and they haven't done another Sinestro since. There's only the movie version.
That'd be cool if they did a Sinestro core of him in this line that's coming out. That'd be awesome.
There's so much potential in doing Green Lantern Funko Pops because there's so many characters you could draw on. I realize some of them wouldn't have the popularity to carry a lot, like some of the more obscure alien ones, but it'd be great to see more. I mean, there's a fair representation, especially if you got the Funko Pop Legion of Collectors Green Lantern box that they did. It was the very last box they did. There was a multi-pack that had Kilowog and Guy Gardner and Chip.
Yeah, I got that one too.
Yeah,
I'm waiting for a Simon Baz one, really.
So you can melt it down for slag or what?
So I can leave it out in the 101 degree heat tomorrow.
You'll be like a little kid with a magnifying glass.
I would be more torturous than that. I'm thinking about breaking out the Black Cats for that one.
All in good fun. All in good fun.
But he does appear. We do get to see him. We are seeing Simon Baz recently, so we know he's around.
Yep. So we've got some stuff to talk about. We've got Justice League Last Ride #2 and Green Lantern #3. We've got some listener feedback. And, of course, we have the Know Your Core segment that you're going to do here momentarily. So I'm looking forward to it. It's been a while since we've recorded, so I'm glad to be able to sit down and chat with you, my friend.
Absolutely.
Listen up, Lanterns. It's time you took the oath with Green Lantern John Stewart. In brightest day, in blackest night, don't let the podcast of Oa escape your sight. Let those who worship evil's might beware my power. Green Lantern's light.
Fellow Owens, welcome back to another Know Your Core segment. And this week we have, that's right, Jade. Jennifer Lynn Hayden Scott. First appearance, All-Star Squadron number 25, the character created by Roy Thomas and Jerry Ordway. Space Sector 2814, the home planet of Earth. Jade is the daughter of Green Lantern Alan Scott and Rose Canton. She gets her powers from the Starheart, which is a little bit different from the power battery. Shortly after she and Todd met, surmising they were children of Alan Scott, they attempted to join the Justice Society, but were rejected, and joined with other children and protégés of JSA members to form Infinity Inc. Due to her father's exposure to magical energies, she and her brother were born with metahuman powers, although Jade's only manifested themselves when she was defending herself from being sexually assaulted as a child. Jade's powers greatly resemble those of the Green Lantern Corps. She's able to generate green energy and shape it into constructs according to her will. She once lost those powers when she fought the Starheart, the source of her powers, but they were restored by Kyle Rayner during his first short tenure as the godlike Ion. She later discovered that she had her mother's plant manipulation powers when she caused Roses to attack a mugger. While on a date with Kyle on an alien world, she told him that her skin actually contains chlorophyll, the source of its green hue, and she can photosynthesize sunlight like a plant. While she was without powers, Kyle gave her a power ring, and she briefly served as Earth's Green Lantern. And there you have it, Owens. Jade, soon to be seen on CW's Stargirl.
Listen up, all you white circles. This is Drill Instructor Kilowog, and you're listening to the podcast of Oa. And don't you forget it, boozers.
All right, Phil. So we're going to start our comic book conversation for this episode talking about Green Lantern number 3. So what was your overall take on this issue?
I like the progression of the storyline. You know, I'm kind of digging it. I'm not a huge fan. I mean, the art's okay. Don't get me wrong. There's parts of it that looks kind of nice, but you know, I'm not a huge fan of the art. But I will say the story arc so far, you know, I like where it's going. You know, I'm interested in it. At least I can say that, right?
Right. Well, Jeffrey Thorne takes this issue and divides it into two because he's kind of telling two separate stories. That also allows him to kind of break the art up more organically. Mm-hmm. So that's interesting. But the first part of the book, the first half of the book, follows John Stewart as he regains consciousness after the explosion of the central power battery. And then the other half focuses on Joe Moline with Kelly Quintella, Simon Baz, and a brief cameo by Hal Jordan, taking place on Oa. So the John Stewart section spans about 145 days. And, you know, I'm kind of wondering, and I've heard over on the Lantern Cast, they kind of came to the same conclusion, that is time passing the same way it's passing for people outside of the dark sector? Because some of the conversation, as time is moving forward, the conversation almost seems like it's not skipping a beat, even though it's jumping forward in time. So I think it's an interesting notion that is what's going on inside of this dark sector transpiring at a different rate of time than what we're experiencing. So in other words, will John spend multiple years inside of the dark sector, yet it might only be 2 months outside of the dark sector? I don't know. I think it's an interesting thought. We see in here where John is being taken care of by a character named Sakari, and her daughter, Ilo, we saw back in Future State Green Lantern as an adult, because obviously time has passed, and we know that Thorne has said that the Future State story takes place 14 years after the events that we saw in the last issue. So she's obviously grown up there. And that's kind of interesting. I like the fact that he played off of John's history. You know, in the opening sequence, you've got Sakari kind of probing John because she doesn't know what he is. Right. To find out more about it. And you see kind of that classroom scene in the beginning, which I thought was interesting. I mean, you knew right away something was going on. Kind of odd when you see them all in class together. But then it jumps forward a little bit, and you have a really neat sequence with Katmatui showing up. And I thought that was really kind of cool because...
Nice to see her back. Yeah, I like her character anyway.
Yeah, well, and you wonder, this seems to take place during the Mosaic era. Because she's talking about John being a guardian, which he was during that time period. So I don't know whether this is a new pseudo memory, or is this something that actually transpired off the page of the Mosaic series, off panel. I don't know.
Are you talking about the part where she walks out of the water?
Yep.
I mean, it kind of looks Mosaic with the coloring.
Yeah. Well, and like I said, she refers to him being a guardian. So I don't know if that's the part then, but it's interesting to see John respond immediately, recognizing that she's not Katmatui at all. And then Katmatui tries to change into Fatality, and that doesn't work either. And that's finally when he gets out of it. That was kind of interesting. But by and large, I didn't find the first half of the book as engaging as the second half.
I would agree with that. I mean, the Jon Stewart story's not too bad. I mean, I like seeing John when he's got the beard. That's kind of neat. Yeah,
and we do find out that the Amanita may have died saving John. Amanita is the mushroom Green Lantern, and the battery goes haywire. One member on our Facebook group mentioned something that they thought was odd, was that why did the power ring suddenly go empty when the central power battery exploded? Because normally the way it would work is, your power ring carries a charge. It's independent of a connection to a central power battery or your own personal battery, that you would at least have that, and you'd probably have whatever charges in your power battery. But what we don't know is the nature of that explosion. Was it purely a physical explosion, or because this might be connected to the magic users we saw, did something happen that drained all that power out? We don't really know.
I would venture to guess that would have been like a device to shut down the entire whatever fuels that kind of willpower fuels it, but at the same time, the green energy that's being fed to these rings, if you kill it at its source, it might just deplete all the rings entirely.
Right. I mean, we've seen in the past it kind of work different ways. It all depends on, I think one of the things I have as a frustration of a long-term reader is just when you think you know the rules, somebody comes along and changes them.
And they really do a lot. That happens a lot in the comic book world.
Sure. And that's not just a commentary on this story. It's happened throughout the history of the characters that, as things go along. I think one of the things I liked during the Johns era was that at least you had, for that period of time, kind of this is how it works, and it stayed that way for the most part. And that made it easier for readers. But, writers are going to do what they're going to do. And, there could very well be a different explanation for what's going on that still makes it fit with canon. Who knows? I also thought it was interesting that we saw the Canary Raiders here. The Raiders that show up on Sakari's planet, Sergilon. The Canary Raiders were in comics once before. They were raiders who attacked a planet by, and I Kalos Farron, but I'm pretty sure I pronounced the name wrong. He was the lead character from the Dark Star series that John was in at one time, and he was the lead character for a while, and they attacked his home planet. So I thought it was maybe a backdoor Easter egg, which I thought was kind of interesting.
What do you think of John's outfit?
I thought it was different. It's different. I thought maybe it was a little too much of a Guy Gardner look, but it's a different style. It's not bad. I thought it was funny that John thought that he was going to be able to intimidate the Raiders by wearing a Green Lantern-ish uniform when he doesn't really have anything to stand on, Sure. And to me, I felt like it was a little out of character, but then again, he's in a situation where he's trying to do the right thing. And what else is he going to do? I think for me, the art was more of a miss than a hit. I think Dexter Soy, to me, his art style lines up more with my personal taste than Tom Rainey. I had a real problem with some of the faces in this first half, and the coloring of Kilowog, giving him a pink head. There's one panel where where Kilowog is leaning over John and saying, nice work, quest leader, we made it. And Kilowog looks nothing like Kilowog. And John's head is so out of proportion. For me, the art was really, really, I don't want to say bad, but the art really didn't line up with what my sensibilities are at all.
I was the same way. I agree. I was the same way.
Yeah. And I kind of felt like the John story to me wasn't the stronger half. I felt that the Joe Mullane section of the book was better.
I felt it was stronger. But then again, I like Joe Mullane better than I don't know. I wonder what a crossover with Joe Mullane and Jon Stewart would look like.
Well, we'll find out, because that's where this is going.
Yeah, that's true.
But, she's trying to deal with managing the devastation on Oa, and while she's trying to deal with the Federation, and she's also trying to figure out what happened. And we see some little glimpses of things. And we see Kyle Rayner. We saw a glimpse of him before. Here you see a little image of him where he's either been rescued or captured in the Vega system. And, from what we recall about the Vega system, Green Lanterns are not welcome there. So he may be just as easily a patient as he is a hostage or a prisoner. He's getting some medical treatment, though. That's a good thing. We see Princess Ayalande. She's fighting for her survival in a hostile world. We see Rotlot Fan wearing some kind of odd harness that he's... Rotlot Fan was naked, and he was rowing on a raft in some alien planet. And then Izamat Cole looked a little worse for wear. He was wearing this harness and floating in space. And Aricia, who was wearing human clothes or her alien species clothes, both seemed to appeared dead and floating in space.
Right. And then we see Simon Baz.
Yep. So to focus back on Izamat Cole and Aricia, we know that Izamat Cole has some healing powers. I don't know if you remember that story where he sacrificed a limb for his partner, his legs for his partner, because his partner lost his legs, and he regenerated it. So I don't know how far those regeneration powers go, but Izamat Cole may be alive, may not. And Aricia has her Graxian physiology has some pretty remarkable healing factors. So they could be dead, but they might not be dead. It's hard to say.
I find it hard to believe they'd kill these characters off.
Well, one of the things that Jeff Thorne has said in interviews is that he's going to cull the herd a little bit, but, the expectation and the thing that he talks about hand in hand is that he believes there are too many Earth Lanterns. And he has said that no humans are going to die in the first arc, but that doesn't mean other members of the Corps aren't. So we'll see. But like you said, we see Simon Baz. He's a little worse for wear. He's got his gun back, which I kind of felt was a regression for the character because he evolved past that. But what else is he going to use to defend himself?
I dig his white shirt with the Green Lantern emblem. I like that.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. It's subtle, but it still shows he's a part of the Corps, essentially.
Still around, people. Don't worry. Hasn't going anywhere.
I just felt it kind of undid some of the progress that we had in the character, but that's just my opinion. I thought that he did a good job with Kelly Quintella because she doesn't have a physical injury, but she's got trauma. And I don't like the Kelly Quintella character in general. I thought that he did a good job of capturing her voice and how he addresses her reaction to what happened. She's got her own trauma, and to me, the reaction is what I would expect a young person to react in that fashion.
Well, and not only that, she doesn't have really a parental type figure or a big brother type of person to look up to, and Simon Baz is a good fill-in for that. I'll give him that kind of credit. I mean, it's a good relationship, and it helps her navigate whatever she's dealing with emotionally and physically.
And, while she's working with the United Planets, Joe Mullane is trying to talk to, the rest of the Human Lanterns. And she's also sending a message out to anybody who's got a ring that might still be working, saying, I'm requesting you should probably stay away because I'm trying to investigate the attack. And if they realize there's more than just me, it might cause another attack. And let's play this kind of cool. And then it ends with them having Hal Jordan listening to that message.
I wonder where he's at.
Well, I'm assuming he's on Earth because he was sent to Earth to protect it as one of the Crux worlds. But the bigger question is we see Hal's ring having a charge. So is this the Cosmic Grail recharged? When we got to the end of the Morrison run, Hal charged his ring on the Cosmic Grail. So is he drawing from a different power source now? Does he still have a connection to that? Or is Thorne playing off on the fact that Hal forged his ring out of pure will, and maybe it doesn't require a charge?
That's what I was kind of going to go with. Yeah, that's what I was pushing.
So I felt the second half was definitely the stronger part of it, but the first half to me felt a little and the art for me really brought it down, in my opinion. But certainly not the worst comic book I've ever read.
Oh, definitely not. No. I mean, and again, like we always say, the first few issues are just the build, and sometimes you gotta, I don't know. I mean, there are comic book arcs that come out where the first issue hits you and then just keeps going. But then there's other arcs that writers use and deploy that, there's a slow burn process, and I feel like that's what Thorne's doing with this whole thing, and I'm okay with it, because I'm interested in where the story arc's going to go. I'll never not read a Green Lantern book for the sole purpose of it could be something different. Even though I may not agree with the person's opinion, I'd be fair like that. At the end of the day, I'm entitled to my same opinion to say I didn't like the story arc.
Sure,
much like anybody. So,
sure.
But I like what Thorne's doing. And it's we've seen Hal a couple times, so we know the character's still around, and he's going to be part of it in some manner or another. He has to be. He can't be omitted entirely. I hope we don't get brazen and try to kill him off.
I would doubt that that's going to happen. And one of the things Jeffrey Thorne has said is there are two Green Lanterns who are absolutely safe. One is Hal and one is Rotlot Fan. So we'll see. And I try to read every Green Lantern book, but I don't wholesalely just... I'm not going to buy it just because it's got Green Lantern in it, because if I disagree with the direction setting, if I'm buying it, I'm endorsing it. So I always approach things from that perspective. I don't automatically just love it because it's got somebody with a power ring in it. And,
But that's good. That's not a bad way to look at it either.
No. I mean, I remember when the Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern comic book came out, there was a whole section of fans who weren't going to buy it just because it had Hal Jordan's name on the cover. And the backlash was, well, if you don't buy it, well, then they're not going to make more. But their point was, well, it's not what I want, and if I buy it, I'm telling them I want more of this, but I want this instead. And if I tell them I don't like what's being published and I want this, they'll get the message. But if I'm buying it and I inflate the sales numbers, then I'm telling them I like what they're doing and I like the direction and the editorial decision making. So I get both sides of it, because at one time, one side you're like, I want to support Green Lantern as a mythology and I want to see more. And the only way to get more books is if the first book does well. But at the same time, if you disagree with the direction setting, or you disagree with some of the creative choices being made,
sure,
why would you want to reward it by buying it? So it's a double-edged sword. It really is.
What have sales been like on this series?
I have no clue. Since they've gone away from Diamond, there isn't really a good gauge on sales. Supposedly they're doing okay, but I don't know what that means. So... It's kind of hard to say. I don't really have a good grasp on sales numbers. Back in the day, you used to be able to tell kind of what the sales numbers were. And even the term sales numbers is a misnomer because it's not true sales. It's what the comic book stores order.
Right. Gotcha.
So, but I have no idea how well it's doing. I'm assuming it's doing okay, but I don't know for a fact one way or the other.
Well, regardless, I mean, whatever DC decides to do with their editorials moving forward, we're always going to have some type of Green Lantern book.
I hope. But, all right, my friend, let's take a quick pause, and when we come back, we'll talk Justice League Last Ride number 2.
Cool.
All All right, fellow Owens, so we are back. This is episode number 195 of the podcast of OA, and we're talking about Justice League The Last Ride number 2. This one had a lot more Green Lantern stuff in it, and not only had Hal, but had John in it as well. Interesting things going on. There's a battle on Oa. My friend Phil, what were your thoughts about this issue?
It was strong. Also, it has Guardians in it too.
Yeah, kind of.
It's strong. This particular book is really, really interesting, and it has a lot of muscle to it because it has all your characters in it. Everybody you want to see. I mean, even Martian Manhunter's in this. And of course Batman, my number one go-to guy. Showing up. But in all truthfully, Aquaman. I like seeing Aquaman in it, and the artwork is spectacular. It's real sharp. It's clean. It's proportioned right. I like it. I like where this is going. I wish this would be an ongoing series.
Yeah, I thought this was really a strong issue. The art was really good. I liked seeing all the characters that showed up. I loved some of the things that happened. For example, Wonder Woman in her golden armor was neat. Seeing what happened to poor Arthur Curry in this issue. And one of the things that, we've been down the road, just like, we talk about how in the Green Lantern book, once again, the central power battery is destroyed. We've seen the deconstruction of the Justice League several times now. And this one, I don't know, it feels different. I'm not quite sure what's different about it, other than I feel like the character work is stronger and the story is more compelling. And I'm not sure whether it's just the way that Chip Zdarsky is constructing the plot and that we don't know exactly what happened. It's implied here that it has to do with Batman and a decision which leads to the death of Martian Manhunter. One of the things I liked in this was that there's, Batman always has a plan. That's the running joke, right? In this situation, Martian Manhunter asks Batman, "What's your plan? What's her plan?" And Batman says, "I don't know." The characters are brought to the point where they don't know how to resolve the situation. They don't know how to get out of the situation. They're actually for one of the times that, at least one of the few times I can recall, they feel hopeless, which is different than some of the other things we've seen. This isn't a traitor. This is a fundamental ideological difference that causes either a mistake or bad error in judgment that's not forgiven, and it drives a wedge there. But I mean, you see the same thing with Cyborg, where he has some doubt over his ability to overcome this as well. And you're going to bring that in, tie it in with Darkseid and Lobo, which we normally don't see in these kinds of stories. I find it fascinating. When they did the animated Apocalypse War cartoon, I didn't think it did a really good job of ending the DC animated universe, movie universe. I felt like this had a lot more meat on its bones. And in particular, it was great to see the fight on Oa. Seeing Superman and Hal fighting alongside of each other in the Green Lantern Corps on Oa as they're under attack from Darkseid's minions. You've got themselves, basically Hal's trying to protect a Guardian. He's like hidden on Oa, and the rest of the Guardians are hidden somewhere else. And next thing you know, Darkseid shows up with 2 dead Guardians in his hands.
Yeah, and that image is awesome.
Oh, it was really, really strong, and you felt more dread in that moment when you see Darkseid having 2 dead bodies in his hands, saying, "I had some errands. Apologies for being late."
I mean, Darkseid is just a formidable foe. Say what you want about the comic book world, but I think Darkseid would wipe the floor with Thanos, hands down.
Oh, I agree. And it was just neat to see Superman in that situation. When's the last time we saw Superman interact with the Green Lanterns? Let alone being an OO alongside the Corps, making what might be a last stand.
Right.
That was really cool. And now we know that, okay, Batman and Martian Manhunter are on Apocalypse trying to deal with what they're dealing with, and somebody's coming into the door, but Darkseid's on Oa. And hopefully we're going to see some major throwdowns with Hal and Superman versus Darkseid. I'm looking forward to that. But then we jump forward, and as they're taking Lobo to Apocalypse to hide him out, you've got some really neat character stuff with Flash and Wonder Woman and Lobo, and then there's a sequence that's got John. He shows up and he's interacting with Superman, and they call Hal, and Hal shows up and they rescue a ship. And it was interesting in the flashback sequence, Hal's got his traditional outfit, the modern version of his uniform. Yeah. But in the sequence that flashes forward in time, he again has the armor that we see. And right. it almost makes me think that is he the power battery now? Is that armor got the power battery in it? You know what I mean? The central power battery. Does he have all that power inside, and he's rebuilding the core? And that's why he's always glowing green the way he is, and he just looks different. I don't know. I'm guessing, because if you look at when he's flying alongside Superman and John's got his green aura, but Hal's got it radiates off of him.
Yeah. Same way with his floating head.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't even think about that, but what a concept. And if you go to the page prior, both images show the same thing with his aura.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I love the fact that you have John and Hal making this big construct to hold the ship back. It's a little simplistic, but it just shows the immensity of the power that they have alongside Superman, because so often Superman dwarfs everybody, and in this situation it's almost like he can't do it by himself, but add Hal and John to it, and it suddenly changes the paradigm a little bit.
Lobo's going to factor in somewhere, but I tell you what I'd like to see is a big throwdown with Lobo and Darkseid.
Wouldn't that be interesting? I don't know if we've ever had that before.
I don't know, man. I've read a lot of Lobo stuff. I mean, I've read Lobo in the past, and I don't remember him ever crossing paths with Darkseid. But if there's any listeners out there, prove me wrong. By all means, sign in and let us know, because I'm really curious. But what a fight that would be.
Well, yeah, and apparently he's in trouble for supposedly killing the New Gods. So I never personally thought that Lobo was on that level, but maybe he is, or maybe there's something different in this part of the storytelling, because we don't really know, is this our universe? Because we've got the Omniverse now. It could be, it's a multiverse of multiverses. We don't really know which Earth heroes this is. Is it ours? Is it somebody else's? Supposedly this is what sets up the Future State Justice League story. I don't know that for a fact, because everything's kind of still up in the air. I think one of the confusing things is when you look at these stories is this an Elseworlds? What universe does it take place in? It doesn't detract from enjoying the story, but you kind of wonder, is this canon or isn't it? Or is there even a such thing as canon anymore?
Yeah, exactly.
But I really enjoyed it. I'll be honest, I enjoyed it more than I enjoyed the Green Lantern book. I thought it was stronger.
Well, that's fair. I'd have to agree with that one too. Yeah, I'm the same way.
All right, my friend. Well, my power ring is a blinking, so I know we've got some incoming messages from our listeners.
All right, let's play those messages, Ring.
All right, let's come back in a minute and we'll jump right into it.
Our first message is from JP on YouTube. His comment is about the last episode and our countdown of favorite Green Lanterns. Commencing transmission in 3, 2, 1.
My number one Green Lantern is Hal Jordan as well. It annoys me a lot because he seems to be misunderstood by some DC fans. They find him boring, or I don't know if it is his post-crisis origin or the relationship with Arisha, or if they cannot get over the Emerald Twilight storyline. I just wish they could see Hal as we see him.
Hey, JP, thanks for the comment. I agree with you. Sometimes I think Hal's a little pigeonholed by preconceived notions or certain storylines, and people only see that part of it. Especially like you talk about the relationship with Arisha. That was really kind of a bad misstep by the creator at the time. I know what they were trying to do, but it didn't come off executed well. And the same with Emerald Twilight. I don't think that was a story that was particularly executed well and put Hal in a bad light. And that's difficult when writers put characters in a way that they kind of get put in a place where they can be misjudged. And when you look at the breadth of the work, those are the minority of things. There's a lot of really cool things, but they get overlooked. And I think you could say the same thing about a lot of characters. There for a long time, people used to ridicule Aquaman, and it wasn't until Jeff Johns came along and really made him cool again. I mean, you had Peter David's run, which was really good as well, but people still didn't take the character that seriously. But people looked to the Super Friends cartoon or the old Filmation cartoon, and that's all they think of when they think of Aquaman. And
yeah,
there's so much more to it. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I totally, especially Aquaman. I mean, he's been the brunt of jokes for years, and I used to read him back when I was in the 80s. I used to read his book. And it was a good book. I actually enjoyed it, but again, like you said, everybody made fun of him. And then Jeff Johns came along and it flipped the coin on him. Now he's one of the coolest.
Right. It just takes a writer coming along and giving it the attention it deserves. Yeah. I think one of the challenges that Green Lantern as a franchise has is that you've got a handful of characters all with the same title, and fans, we've talked about this before, fans like the character or characters they like, some more than others. And I think it makes it difficult because it kind of makes for a disjointed fan base. Whereas you don't really see that, for example, with Aquaman, or you don't really see that with Hawkman too much.
Right.
But, all right, Power Ring, why don't you go ahead and play us the next message?
The next message is from the Emerald Enthusiast. His comment is about DC Comics Round Robin Contest. Commencing transmission in 3, 2, 1.
I think DC's heart was in the right place with the Round Robin tournament, but the execution was completely wrong. Had they done something like a poll that asked, which of these would you add to your poll list? Pick 3, then they would have been aware of the titles that customers wanted with a more positive engagement. The tournament seems to have at least partially backfired. P.S. Who was cheering when Myron joked that Kyle Rayner was his number one? This guy.
Hey, Donnie. Yeah, the Round Robin, I don't know, man. I mean, your point was valid. I see what you said. At a poll list and pick 3, and that would have been a good idea. Anything they could have done would have been a better idea than what was deployed. But I'm not the one calling the shots. Neither are you. Neither is Myron. Neither is anybody sitting next to me. But but at the same time, I think that's been one of the ongoing issues with DC is it's marketing. It's just. I think they have a poor marketing team, and I think they have a poor development team, to be quite honest with you. But that would take up a whole nother podcast. And I don't know who was cheering when Myron joked about the Rayner thing. Was that me? Oh, no. That was Donnie. I'm sorry.
When I said that, I had Donnie in mind when I said it intentionally, because I know how much of a Kyle fan he is. And I thought, I'm going to say that. And I'm going, he's going to pick up on that. So I'm glad you did, Donnie.
I love Donnie. His videos are fun, man. He sends me stuff through Twitter sometimes, and he's a good guy, great collector.
Yeah,
stuff, man.
But yeah, I agree. I think the Round Robin came from a good place. I just don't think they thought it through. I mean, having the final vote being on the DC Universe app only, first of all, you eliminated any audience outside of the United States, and when you looked at the voting of those polls, that was always at the lowest turnout. So you really limited your audience. And part of the problem I have with these popularity polls, which is what they become, is are you really getting the voices of the people who are going to buy the book? Or do you get people who just have an opinion because they like character X or they want to see this demographic involved? Is it really the people who are going to spend the money? Are you really getting a gauge for what book is really going to be successful or what book is really wanted the most or not? And I don't think you do in those kind of situations. I like what Donnie said, what would you add to your poll list? I would have loved to have seen them print those little synopsises and print one issue and have 5 of those stories in it. And as Donnie said, do a pick 3 and have a code inside that you use to redeem it. So you got to buy the book to read it, so you know there's actually someone who's taken the time to read those stories and those plot synopsises and what the pitches are. And that code means that it was somebody who had to buy it. It's a one-time use code. So you're not getting somebody flooding it by creating multiple identities on different platforms and flooding the polls. You're getting a more true and accurate representation. And sure, it would have been more expensive and more involved. Sure. But I think it was probably fairer in the long run. And I think, unfortunately, what they did is they divided the customers more than unified them, which is unfortunate. Yeah, I think, like Donnie said, it kind of backfired.
Yep, agreed. All right, well, play my next message.
Our next message is from Joe Public. He's sharing his thoughts on Green Lantern number 3. Commencing transmission in 3, 2, 1.
The whole Green Lanterns without their rings thing just doesn't interest me at all. The second half of the book was better but not enough. I was drawn to the book by the controversy surrounding the writer. Hal Jordan always seemed a bit too 1950s leading man for my taste, and Jon Stewart a little too much a model minority. Guy Gardner was too much John Wayne. Kyle Rayner seemed likable enough. The rings and sci-fi settings are what I liked most. With so many long-term fans lining up against the writer, my underdog instinct kicked in and I decided to support the book. I'm not saying long-term fans don't have valid points. I'm just giving an outsider's view. I hope the writer hit a home run soon. He's had 5 issues so far. I'll call them innings. I'll give him till the top of the 9th before I pull him.
Thank you, Joe Public. And you know what? I like your viewpoint. You bring up a lot of interesting stuff. And I like your relations to the characters. Guy Gardner being too much John Wayne, and I think your perspective of this particular series is better served than maybe your like me or Myron sometimes, because you got a different take on it than we do, right? So your experience of the writer, unbiased or not, is going to be a completely different experience from my own, just like any other comic book or any other reader that's out there listening or whatnot. The sci-fi setting is always what appealed to me about the Green Lantern Corps. I got kind of bogged down or bummed out when they were on Earth for too long. I like seeing them out taking care of different sectors and stuff too. So, but you're not an outsider though, man. You're a Green Lantern Corps member.
That's right. Now that you're in, man. Once a Green Lantern, always a Green Lantern. But you come at it from a different perspective because maybe you haven't read all the things that transpired, so you've got a completely different perspective. And certainly, your views on the characters are colored by what exposure you've gotten before you come to this book. I hope that you stick around, and I hope you go back and read some of the older stuff and see some of the, especially the Johns run and the Robert Venditti run. I think those two things are really critical to anybody who really wants to get into things, because that really colors the modern age, if you will, of Green Lantern. But I think it's good that you're trying it and giving it a shot. And again, you're coming at it from a different perspective, so you don't see some of the problems that perhaps I see, because I've been reading for over 40 years or so. Like 45 years, 48 years, something like that. I don't want to give a number anymore. But, it's certainly, we approach it from different perspectives. And I know as someone like myself who's emotionally invested in the franchise, I certainly come at it with a lot of passion and so on. And so I don't have the ability to completely disassociate my history with the franchise when I read anything with the Green Lantern logo on it. So, in some ways I envy you, because you come at it without all that extra baggage, so to speak, or history. So yeah. It's cool. All right, Power Ring, why don't you go ahead and play the last message?
The last message is from Ryan. He's commenting on the last episode. Playing the message in 3, 2, 1.
If you can play Michael's email, then you can play this one too. That will be the last episode I listened to. Even playing Michael's comment was sickening. For you to play a comment of a person that literally says he stopped reading comics because of a gay agenda is ridiculous. Then you go on to agree vastly with the majority of his comment, you are only supporting his hate. Are gay characters an agenda? Yes. But Jon Stewart was an agenda. Wonder Woman was an agenda. Junkie Speedy was an agenda. Desmond told a story of diversity. Comics are an agenda. There have always been real-life stories tied into comics, including presidents. But now that there is a left-leaning agenda, it's unreadable. I didn't realize that equality and representation were only for the left. On second thought, I did know that. What are right-leaning agendas? More guns, less healthcare, and an isolation worldview like the Daxamites. You also say that you shouldn't criticize people before their work, yet that is exactly what Myron is doing. There have been non-stop Hal stories for decades, and when Stewart is the lead, all of a sudden it's unreadable for you. You complain, and I did as well, that it's another Broken Lantern story, then praise The Last Ride because it's another disassembled corpse story. The constant complaining about representation has been going on for too long now. I'm out, not sorry.
So first off, I apologize for what's going to be a lengthy response, but I think the subject matter warrants a kind of a full conversation, at least for my part, or a full response. And I apologize for those that don't want to listen to stuff talking about politics, but this is going to dip a little bit into that. But first off, no podcast seeks out to lose listeners. So I'm really, truly sorry to see anybody say they no longer want to listen to what we have to say, because our goal has always been to add something to the Green Lantern fan experience for everybody. I had two guiding principles that I've done my very best to follow over the course of the past decade. And the first is that everyone has a place at our table. And that means everyone, even those we might disagree with. The first part of getting along with people is focusing on what we have in common and not what makes us different. In my 56 years, I've always found it better to overcome our differences by finding the common ground and building from there. The second thing is something I'm really proud of, and that's that this show's content has been, with one exception of an episode where I went on a rant against the Cartoon Network over the cancellation of the Green Lantern animated series, that this show is something that's both fan and family friendly. That somebody could listen to the podcast of OA with their children in the backseat of the car and not worry about questionable language or content. And we've in fact gotten comments over the years that our efforts have been appreciated because we've done just that. Up until now, I have never had the urge to censor or dismiss anybody's opinions because people are entitled to what they believe in, even if we don't agree with it. And if you're thinking that we agreed with everything in Mike's email, you really haven't been paying attention. The email in question had 19 sentences in it, and you chose to focus on one of them. Phil and I chose to focus on the email as a whole and keep it on subject of Green Lantern rather than go down a road we didn't feel we needed to. We did point out that while we didn't agree with everything that was said, the overall message was something that we've heard from fans before. We understand it, and to some degrees we agree with some of those sentiments. That some comics today are really not family friendly. That there's a lot of political stuff in comics that go a little too far. During the height of the pandemic, we opened up this show to a wide variety of Green Lantern fans from every walk of life. And while we certainly didn't ask people about their skin color or their nationality or their religious beliefs or their sexual preferences, I think that there was quite a bit of representation there. And I know for a fact that at least one of the guests we've had over the past 194 episodes are part of the LGBTQ plus community. Now, did we have other guests that were? Probably, but we never asked because it's not the point. The point is we were talking to Green Lantern fans. And if we really found it objectionable to have somebody from a certain demographic to be on our show, we certainly wouldn't have had that person on the show because we intentionally focus on being fan and family friendly. Now, the Catholic Church isn't known for supporting homosexual relationships, but I guarantee you, if the Pope were a Green Lantern fan, we'd still have him on the show to talk about comic books despite that fact. And yeah, it's true, comics have had agendas, and there have often been real-life stories reflected on their pages. Comic books are a broad and creative art form, to be sure. But I think for the most part, superhero comics in particular have been primarily escapist entertainment that sometimes have something to say about the world. And there's a growing discontent from fans who look to get away from the realities of the world by diving into the pages of a 4-color comic book. And they get turned off by creators who can't help but infuse their works with their politics. It's the creator's right to do so, but the way in which many writers today are going about it is alienating fans because it's less insightful commentary and more about trying to show their supposed ideological righteousness. What makes today's air quote agenda-driven content seem so different from books like the classic X-Men is that in those days those creators spoke in broader strokes, and they really intelligently spoke through the use of allegory. Some of today's writers seem bent on hitting their reader over the head with their ideology in ways that don't promote introspection or intellectual examination. For example, look at the Green Lantern 80th Anniversary Special where, during an election year in the United States, one writer rightly mentioned the wrongs of profiling people, but then they turned around and went on and said it was okay to do that as long as you're profiling white men wearing red hats. And excusing that as having a air quote, hyper awareness of your surroundings. I'm sorry, but that's not good storytelling. That is the very definition of pushing a political agenda. It falls into the we're right, you're wrong territory, and it has a smug, self-righteous air of superiority about it. I'm not going to dive into your whole left-wing versus right-wing gibberish. I'm pretty apolitical myself, and I'm just going to say this. It's been my long-held belief that the left wing and the right wing are both parts of the same political bird that have been pooping all over this country's windshield for a very long time. And to think that either side is a good guy is woefully naive. Your perception of how I'm approaching this new series is off base. I imagine I've been reading Green Lantern longer than you've been alive, and this is hardly the first time that a Green Lantern book has focused on a character besides Hal Jordan. That's really not an issue. As I've said before, my issue with this series is that DC Comics has given the franchise to somebody who literally hates the character who built the franchise. To me, that's poor decision-making on DC's part and does more damage to an already fractured fan base than it's worth. Period. I approach the books through a different lens. I bring with it my history. I do that with all the books. If you go to comicbookroundup.com, which is essentially the Rotten Tomatoes for comics, you'll see my reviews that are there. And you'll find that my reviews are not the harshest this series has garnered from reviews or readers. In fact, the first 3 issues of this series aren't even the lowest rated books I've ever reviewed. When the Larfleeze series came out, I gave that book absolutely abysmal reviews because I really disliked what they did with the character. And those books were written by Keith Giffen, who's an industry icon. In fact, I even stopped reading that series after the 2nd issue. Now, I've spoken in the past about how much Marv Wolfman means to me, and quite frankly, he's 100 times the writer that Jeffrey Thorne is. And he wrote a story which really, quite frankly, probably saved my life. I got a chance to meet the guy a few years ago, and he and I had a very tear-eyed conversation about what that book meant for me when I shared my story with him. And he means a lot to me. But yet, when he wrote a Green Lantern Plastic Man book, I thought it was so bad I gave it a 0. So, I'm sorry you can't differentiate my criticism from what you perceive as some kind of ism or phobia. But sir, that's on you, not me. So if you honestly feel you can do a better job, please go do so. This is really going to be my last word on the subject, and I'm not going to air any more further conversation about it whatsoever. And in the future, maybe we'll start editing the content or be more selective about the content we air. And that's all I've got to say about it.
Well, that was well said. And not only was it well said, it was you articulated many points that I want to make sure readers understand. And first and foremost, the most important part that I took from that whole entire thing you went on, what would I call that? A response, is that the family friendliness of our podcast. I slip up curse words every once in a while, and sometimes I do it in front of my son. And, sometimes it's so ingrained in me because I work for the public schools and I'm in a high school, and you deal with a lot of issues and stuff. And while it's not the military, I do slip up. But the podcast has always been family friendly like that. And Myron's made it a point to make it that way. And I adhere to it. And when I do slip up, he beeps me out. But the biggest thing that encompasses that whole issue about the family friendly thing is that even conversations such as how this one is going between us and this listener is not family friendly to me, because these are the things that I feel like are not for this podcast, but for somebody else's podcast. I've studied enough history in my lifetime and went through my master's program and political science to understand that I don't even like engaging in certain rhetoric like this, because sometimes it leads down a rabbit hole that nobody wants to go. And like Myron said, I would rather find our common ground before we get drudged down into, what this person said and hinging on one small comment and, thinking that we're bashing another group of individuals. And that's never been the case. And we've never done that on this podcast. And, I feel strongly about my convictions in that, when it comes to certain topics that are hot points, it's tough because, it's like you don't know if you're stepping on a landmine or not, because sometimes it does blow up in your face, and we all come across these things in our life, and they're unavoidable. But to open up the conversation, it's better to say, hey, let's talk about this, instead of automatically coming at somebody with your guns blazing, because you're not giving the other person another chance to explain, especially when you're not incorporating all the context of everything, but hinging on one particular sentence of a what, 19 of them. And so I love everything that Myron said, and the thing that I love the most is that this is Myron's podcast, and this is his hard work. I mean, this isn't an easy task to do, and he's been doing it diligently for years now. And I was lucky to come on board, and and Myron and I are a lot alike with the way we think. And when it comes to representation, I got news for you, people. Everybody is invited to the table that we speak on, because everybody here is a Green Lantern fan at the end of the day. And it doesn't effing matter if the Green Lantern is Asian or white or black or whatever the case may be. It doesn't matter, because it's an alien core to begin with. And everybody has their voice. And I love everybody the same, even if you're a Batman fan, even if you're a Simon Baz fan. Doesn't matter to me. We all have our likes, we all have our dislikes, and we're okay with that. But everybody else needs to be okay with that too, And Myron's point about the Jeffrey Thorne and railing on Hal Jordan, nobody would like to know going into the next incantation of a characterization of a Green Lantern book, knowing that the writer that's been handed the reins has been railing on a character that you identify with. And I'm sure anybody out there would be offended if that was to happen to their character, especially if it was a heated topic, or especially if it touched areas of personal issues, mind you, or a political stance. Anybody would feel the same way. And, and I stand behind Myron with how he feels about this. And to be quite honest with you, Myron and myself have been giving this book a fair shot. I'm enjoying it. I've taken the Jeffrey Thorne thing out of my, out of what I feel, just because, to me, I want to make that an irrelevant thing for me, because I want to focus on the story and give this person a chance to see what he can write. But the minute I do pick up on any kind of slanderous effect that has to do with a character that I like, that kind of diminishes me, diminishes that writer in my mind, because there's no need to do that. So at the end of the day, I appreciate his stance on what his thoughts are. And I think that if this conversation ever were to exist at a round table, I think it would be more productive. But unfortunately, it's shared through social media and email links and Facebook threads, or whatever the case may be. And a lot gets lost in that translation when you can't talk to somebody from person to person and make sure when you're looking across, hey, are you okay with this conversation? And they look at you to make sure you're okay with this conversation. So, in all fairness, I don't like to lose the listeners because, like I said, this is Myron's podcast and this is his baby. And, and I have a lot of strong feelings about that, because I respect that to him as a person. And, and me getting on board and being able to come along for the ride with this has been wonderful for me. And I don't like that fans can be so aggressive when it comes to their stance and their ideological base. I think there's enough room to breathe out there to know that Myron and I have never and will never intentionally step on anybody's toes when it comes to what they strongly believe in, even if you like a character that we don't. So that was just my adding points to it. And I think what Myron said was fair and just. And, I hope you take it to heart if you're listening, and either get over it or, hey, come back on board and listen to us. We still have a lot to say.
You can become a part of the show by leaving a message up to 1 minute long on our voicemail line. Call us at 406-POD-OA. That's 406-763-6362. You can also email us at podcast@blogofoa.com. We'd love to hear from you.
All right, Myron and our fellow Owens. Episode 195 in the bag.
That's right, another one down. One more closer to 200. That's good. I'm not sure what we want to talk about next issue, or next episode, excuse me. We don't have any new books coming up right away, and I'd like to get another episode done in June. So why don't you and we'll get together offline and we'll figure out what we want to do. Maybe we want to do another character show where we talk about somebody's origins or something. Or we'll go back to the Jeff Johns run, or who knows.
There's a lot of territory.
I might make up a lot of ideas, put them on a dartboard, and then throw a dart and see what I come closest to.
We could do an episode where we envision what our story would entail when it comes to the Green Lantern Corps.
Yeah, we might. Yeah, we'll come up with something.
Hey, we can call it Future State Part 2.
All right, my friend. Let's wrap this one up, and we'll be back sometime during the month of June with our next episode. Thanks for sticking around, and as always, treat each other well, keep that power ring charged, and make every day your brightest day. The Podcast of OA is the official podcast of the blog of OA and a proud member of the Comics Podcast Network. Share your comments and questions by calling the show's voicemail line at 406-POD-OA. That's 406-763-6362. You can send your emails to podcast@blogofoa.com. You can also find the Blog of OA and the Podcast of OA on Twitter and Facebook. Green Lantern and other related characters are the copyrighted property of DC Comics Incorporated and are used without permission. The Blog of OA and the Podcast of OA are fan productions and do not claim any ownership over the Green Lantern or any other copyrighted properties.